What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Wake and Jake College Football Show. The regular season is officially over. Every team except for Army-Navy have played 12 games. We are on to conference championships, bowl games, and the like. What a great season, honestly. Overall, just an absolutely crazy, bizarre season. We didn't, other than Oregon, we did not have any other team who was just absolutely dominant from start to finish. And usually we have two, sometimes three teams that are. So great season, a lot of parity. These last 2 weeks especially have just been absolutely nuts. I've loved every second of this season. I am sad to see it come to an end. I've said it before, some people say that what's upcoming is the best part of college football season. I disagree. The regular season is my favorite, will always be my favorite. I'm sad to see it end, but I'm excited for what's still to come. Typical show today, recapping the weekend that was. Going to get into my college football playoff prediction, which, let's be honest, the only one that actually matters is the one at the very end of the season, so this doesn't even matter. But still got to give a prediction on it. Recap the betting weekend, which, a little bit of a teaser for that, absolutely killed it. Positive attitude, winning mindset, we turned it around. And then finish off with my favorite. Dude, are you high? But before we get into any of that, let's get a little high. All right. Right off the bat, we're just going to get into it. Minnesota Minute. Friday's games. Minnesota wins 24-7. The axe is back where it belongs. Absolute domination from start to finish. Now, some might argue, was it actual domination? Yes, it was. Wisconsin finished with 167 total yards of offense, which is absolutely abysmal. 3 of 14 on third downs. They didn't turn the ball over, so I'll give them that. Offensively, they did not turn the ball over. Props to them, I guess, on that one. But defensively, Wisconsin, I guess, did make a few stops. Minnesota did have to punt 6 times. They only scored 24 points. But overall, this offense was really able to do whatever they wanted against this Wisconsin defense, which was supposed to be the strength of this team. Darius Taylor could not be stopped. Elijah Spencer, Daniel Jackson, again, could not be stopped. And Brosmer did what Brosmer does. Threw accurate balls that only the receivers could catch, and the receivers came up with some brilliant catches. If I were to nitpick one thing about this game, I would have liked to have seen a turnover or two, and I would have liked to see them run up the score a little more. 24-7 is great. It's a dominant win. You did it at Wisconsin. 31-7's better. It's more humiliating. I would have been all for that. I'm all about humiliating your rivals if you have the opportunity to. It feels like different circumstances, maybe even better weather, Minnesota would have just absolutely wrecked them by even more than they did. So, dominant win. Minnesota finishes the season strong. You can argue, and you're not wrong, in my opinion, that Minnesota is a handful of plays away from being a 10-2 team, a 9-3 team. They really are that good. Finishing the season 7-5 is still good, especially compared to what they were projected to do. But they were so close to being a 9-3, 10-2 team. And I expect them to finish the season 8-5. I do. We know PJ Fleck's bowl record. Nobody's losing. Nobody's beating this Minnesota team in bowl season. I'm just going to say that right now. Also, Wisconsin. Losing season, 5-7. Missing out on a bowl game for the first time in 20-plus years. First losing season in 20-plus years. Absolutely beautiful. I love it so much. I love that we were able to end that streak for them. And it's nice to see your rivals down and struggling. Because, like I said, Minnesota's only a couple plays away from being 9-3, 10-2. Wisconsin, not even close to being 8-4, 9-3, 10-2. They were quite a few plays away from even sniffing that. So it's nice to see. It's nice to be on top. I wish we had another year of Brosmer. Iowa 13, Nebraska 10. I mean, this is the most Iowa way to win, Nebraska way to lose. Because Nebraska defensively did everything they could. And they had no business losing this game. Iowa was 0 for 10 on third down. Did not convert a single third down all game. had 164 yards of total offense, had the ball for 18 less minutes than Nebraska. And yet Nebraska couldn't help but fumble away the lead. Literally fumbled it away. They muffed a punt on their own 4-yard line. Iowa takes over. Can't even punch it in for a touchdown. Has to settle for a field goal when they started at the 4-yard line. You can't... You settled for a field goal. Nebraska forced you to settle for a field goal, and you still won the game. How? With 20 to 30 seconds left in the game, Dylan Raiola, game's tied at 10. He's going to try to see if he can get the team down, field goal position, win the game. Instead, he fumbles it inside their own 40-yard line and giving Iowa a short field again. Just had to run the ball twice, kicked a game-winning field goal. Absolutely heartbreaking for Nebraska. Here's even worse. Iowa's 164 yards of total offense, 97 of those yards came on 2 plays. Take out those 2 plays, Iowa had 67 yards of total offense the whole game, and they won the game 13-10. Absolutely heartbreaking for Nebraska. Iowa's a rival, so you never want to see them win. But Nebraska fans and the team and the aura and everything around them is so annoying that I'm kind of glad Iowa won the way they did and that it ended this way. So funny, in my opinion. Heartbreaking for Nebraska fans. I guess I do feel for you, because if I was a Minnesota fan and this is how Minnesota lost the game, I would be punching holes in walls. It would be ugly. Georgia Tech, Georgia. I am not a fan of either one of these teams. I have found myself backing Georgia Tech more often than not as the season's gone on, because it's just hard not to root for them, especially if you've followed them or seen them play at all. It's hard not to root for Haynes King and this Georgia Tech team. So this game hurt. It hurt me a little bit. I woke up the next day still sad for Georgia Tech, the team and their fans. Not like sad because like I would feel after a Gopher loss or heartbreaking loss like that, but like you still just felt bad for them. They lose after 8 overtimes, 44-42. I said it. I told you, if Haynes King is healthy and plays, Georgia Tech has a shot. If you watch that game, Haynes King is definitely not healthy. That dude is banged up. He is a warrior. He is a fighter. Tough to see him not pull out the win in that one. But he did play. And when he plays, this Georgia Tech team is so different than when he doesn't. Just the vibes are just overall better. And they had every shot to win this game. They came out firing, and they were up 17-0 at half. Georgia had not been shut out at home, in the first half since I think they said 2019. It has been 5 years since Georgia was shut out in the first half. And just still kept chipping away a little bit in the second half. It wasn't quite as deadly, but still had a shot. And then Georgia, just shout out to Carson Beck. He played good, but in Georgia Tech's defense, that secondary absolutely depleted. If you were watching this game, it was shocking how many injuries just happened in this game alone. Now, granted, some of these injuries are because guys are playing banged up. And so a hit that normally wouldn't cause an injury or cause pain is going to cause injury or cause pain just because they're already playing banged up and injured. So many injuries to that defensive secondary. Unfortunate. But when you look at Carson Beck's numbers, just know that, yes, he's a good quarterback, but that's also why his numbers were so good. It's just that secondary is so depleted. Georgia Tech had the lead, 27-20, 3:39 left in the game. Georgia fans were leaving the game. They were filing out of the game. And Georgia Tech just has to essentially run out the clock. They have to convert third downs like they were doing all game and run out the clock. And Haynes King, I think he faked the pitch, took the ball up the middle or something like that. But either way, running up the middle, and I don't remember the Georgia safety's name, former walk-on, comes flying in and puts helmet to ball and absolutely decks King, and that ball pops out. And nobody knew the ball even popped out for a few seconds. Georgia player happens to see it, dives on it. Georgia takes over with short field position, scores the game-tying touchdown, and we go to overtime. Now, Georgia Tech got out-coached in overtime. At some point in the offseason, we're going to get into rule changes that I would like to see for the next season, and one of them is going to be overtime. I never thought they should have fucked with it in the first place, but if you had to fuck with it, there are some tweaks that, and they did, there are some tweaks that I would still like to make. And I'll get into that in the offseason. We're not going to get into that now, but 8 overtimes it took. For those who don't know, teams start at the 30, 25-yard line. And they have, essentially one timeout, and you have the chance to get essentially 2 first downs. But you get a chance to score a touchdown, win the game. Now, obviously, the other team does still get a chance to also do the same. Both teams are still tied after that. Same thing. Only this time you're not allowed to kick an extra point. You have to go for 2 points. If both teams are still tied after that, then you just go to alternating 2-point conversions. Again, I'll get into the rule changes that I would like to make. Whatever. Georgia outlasts Georgia Tech. All-time gutsy performance by Georgia Tech. King was hurt. The secondary was dead. Like I said, it was sad to see them lose. But shout out to Kirby Smart and that Georgia team for fighting back and winning that game. Great game. It was such a great game. Even if you weren't invested in either one of these teams, I feel like all of America was rooting for Georgia Tech, and only Georgia fans were rooting for Georgia. But what a great game. All right, let's get into Saturday's games, obviously starting with the noon slate. Is Ryan Day fired? Because what the hell was that? Michigan goes into Ohio State and wins 13-10. And Michigan was without a few of their best players. They were without Colston Loveland, who is their only receiver. Go look at Michigan's receiving stats, and it is shocking how there is nobody but him to throw the ball to. And then they were also without Will Johnson, their best defensive back. Now, granted, yes, Ohio State is without starting center, starting left tackle. Michigan does have an elite defensive line. So I'm not going to argue, that they also didn't have their losses. But that's great for Ohio State. That means that Michigan's offense isn't going to be able to do shit because they're already one-dimensional, but without Colston Loveland, even more one-dimensional. And then defensively, we should be able to, throw the ball a little without their best defensive back. Psych. That didn't happen. Absolutely pitiful game. Now, you could argue that Ohio State did technically outplay Michigan. When you kind of break it down, they just shot themselves in the foot. It's more or less they lost the game than Michigan won it. But Michigan's without a few of their best players. They're already struggling this year. You have a $20 million roster, and you lost at home to Michigan. Is Ryan Day fired? 4 straight losses to Michigan. You can't do that. 0 national championships. Yes, you did play for one. 0 national championships. And you've been to the playoff every year. Still, no national championships. That's what Ohio State expects. And they also expect to beat Michigan. 4 straight losses. 2 missed field goals within 40 yards in this game. 1 interception inside your own 5-yard line, allowing a very easy touchdown drive. Regardless of how one-dimensional Michigan's offense is, their rush attack is still good. So only giving them like 2 yards to go, come on. And then you throw an interception inside Michigan's red zone. You get all the way down to the red zone and throw an interception, plus those 2 missed field goals, plus throwing that interception deep in your own zone. Ohio State had every chance to win this game. Also, can we talk about Davis Warren throwing one of the worst interceptions ever? You have a receiver, I don't know if it was the tight end or receiver, wide open. All you have to do is loft it over the defender, who is 5 yards away from the receiver, and you have an easy touchdown. And he throws it directly to Jack Sawyer. What are you doing? So there was that. Michigan was not helping themselves. Ohio State had every chance to win this game and just shit the bed. They're still probably going to make the playoff because that Michigan loss, as terrible as it is a rivalry game. And I do think Michigan does not get talked about as tough of a beat as it should be. I think Michigan is still a good team. They still have talented players, regardless of what their record is. It's just that they're so one-dimensional that it's hard to win games. But that defense is still good. The rush attack is still pretty good. Michigan's still a good team, and that's still a tough team to beat. So Ohio State will still make the playoffs, but I don't know if they're going to win it all. And it's hard. You can't, like, you look at Ryan Day's winning percentage and the talent he brings in, and you think you can't fire him, but you lose to Michigan every year. You still haven't won the national championship. If he does get fired, he's going to get picked up almost immediately. He could sit out a couple years and still demand, top jobs when he comes back. But Ohio State's in a tough spot right now. Tennessee 36, Vandy 23. I don't have much to say on this game other than congrats, Tennessee. You are officially in the playoffs with that huge win over Vandy. And yes, it is a huge win because Vandy is a rival, so they're going to play this game a little tougher. But you beat Vandy by 13. There's really nobody that can say that they've beat Vandy by that much and that easily. Vandy has kept every game close. They've made every game mucky and dirty and brought you down to their level and beat you with experience. Congrats to Tennessee and when Vandy gets a lead, they very rarely give it up. So if you fall behind early to Vandy, it is very hard to win the game because they just keep the ball away from you, take up a lot of time, and don't score a lot, but 23, that's a lot for Vandy. They don't score 23. Tennessee was down very early in this game, and it looked scary for them early on because, like I said, coming back from behind against Vandy is very hard to do. Vandy returned their opening kickoff for a touchdown. Tennessee gets the ball. Second play, opening drive, Dylan Sampson fumbles. Vandy recovers, and before the first quarter was over, Tennessee was down 17-7. Like I said, that is quite the deficit to come back from, especially against Vandy. And they proceeded to outscore Vandy 29-6 the rest of the game. Nico Iamaleava struggled a little early, 18-26, 297 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. Dylan Sampson, 25 carries, 178 yards. He did get a little banged up at the end of that game, so I'm a little curious to see how healthy he is moving forward. But guys, Tennessee is getting hot at the right time. That offense is starting to click. If we start to look at Nico's numbers over the last 3-4 games or whatever versus his previous 4, he's turned a corner. He's starting to hit some throws. He likes to start games slow and then just gets better as they go on, which you don't see often, especially with young quarterbacks. You'll see if they start off, it's off the rest of the game, or they start hot and then cool off as the game goes on. He does the opposite. He starts slow, turns it around, and then just continually gets better as the game goes on. Watch out for Tennessee in the playoff. They have a real shot to be in the Final Four, if not playing for the national championship game. This defense is good enough, and the offense is starting to finally click. South Carolina 17, Clemson 14. Lenore Sellers is a damn problem. Throwing the ball, he was only 13-21, 164 yards, 1 interception. I mean, nothing special. Probably don't like to have that interception. But 16 carries, 166 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And if you saw his 2 touchdown runs, I mean, unreal. The first one, I don't know. I didn't think it was a touchdown. I don't know how he scored that touchdown. And the second one, he had no business scoring that one either. It's just Clemson, one guy, I go back and watch that final touchdown. There was one guy who just kind of gave up on the play. But he was just weaving around like he was Lamar Jackson, just running all over the place, and then just boom, right in the end zone, basically untouched. It was bizarre. He single-handedly beat Clemson. Clemson, unfortunately, is a bunch of frauds. Before the season, I think I had Clemson going 10-2, which 9-3 is not far off. And I had Clemson playing for the ACC championship game, and I may have even had them playing in the playoff. And we're going to get into it here in a little bit. Clemson is playing for the ACC championship. Even though they lost, they are playing for the ACC championship game. If they win that game, they might make the playoff, which is bizarre because preseason I did have them playing in the playoff. But if they were to make the playoff, I just bullshit. I'm just going to say it because Clemson is a bunch of frauds. They are 9-3 on the season, and they are 0-3 against the significantly best teams they've faced this on their schedule. The 4th best team that they have faced, Pitt, I think they lost yesterday. So they are 7-5 after starting 7-0. That win against Pitt is not as great as it maybe was made out to be going into that game. Louisville, Georgia, South Carolina, significantly better than all the rest of the teams that Clemson has played this year, and they are 0-3 against those teams. They are averaging 12.5 points per game against those teams and 43 plus against every other team they've played. Clemson sucks. They suck. But they are still playing for the ACC championship game, and they still have a chance for the playoff. But Clemson sucks. Duke 23, Wake Forest 17. I only want to talk about this game because of two things. One, the ending was phenomenal, but two, I also needed this. I needed Duke to win outright for one of my 7 legs on a parlay. So this game I was very invested in. Duke was down 17-3 with roughly 2 minutes or so left in the third. And then they scored 2 touchdowns within the next 4 or 5 minutes of game time to tie it up. And then it stayed tied until about a minute and a half left in the game. Duke gets the ball, takes over, and Malik Murphy throws a beautiful ball down the sideline, 39-yard touchdown as time expires. Absolutely electric. I was pumped. Like I said, I needed that for one of my legs in a parlay that did end up hitting. Thank you, Malik Murphy. Thank you, Duke. But that ending was insane. A walk-off. They were just trying to get into field goal position to attempt a field goal, and then he said, fuck it. I'm going to hit this dude with no time left for a touchdown. Just beautiful. Afternoon games. Miami. Syracuse. Miami, all they had to do was win the game, and they were in the ACC championship game. They lose. Regardless of the Clemson result, Clemson was going to make the ACC championship game. I already mentioned how Clemson's playing for the ACC championship game, so as you can imagine, Miami lost this game 42-38, which cannot be that surprising that Miami lost a shootout or won in a close shootout, because that's just the way Miami's been this year. Nobody has stopped that offense all year, and Syracuse kind of did, but not really. But their defense cannot stop anybody's offense. They just allow too many big plays. And Syracuse has a better offense than most of the teams Miami has struggled to defend. So it cannot be that surprising that this game was 42-38. No defense was played in this game, clearly. Nearly 1,000 yards of offense between the two teams and 80 points being scored. Syracuse definitely struggled in the first half, specifically the first quarter. Miami was up 21-0 and then got outscored 42-17 the rest of the way, which, like I said, Syracuse did somewhat shut down Miami's offense, but still 38 points is 38 points. That's a lot. We cannot be shocked by any of this. Cristobal always loses games that he's not supposed to lose, and Miami's been flirting with disaster all year. It was only a matter of time before it caught up with them. It just happened in the 2 of their last 3 games of the season so far. So all they had to do was win, and they were in the ACC championship game, but they lost, and lowly Clemson's playing for it. I think Miami's still going to make the playoff, but I don't think anybody has high hopes for them. I expect them to lose immediately, depending on who their matchup is. But I expect almost every other team in the playoff to be able to beat Miami at this point, just because that defense can't stop anyone. Notre Dame 49, USC 35. This game was so much closer. Notre Dame was only up 35-28 with just under 6 minutes left in the game. And USC, I would be tearing my hair out if I were a fan. Like I said, down 7, 6 minutes left, and you drive the ball down the field and throw a 99-yard pick six. Sucks. But there's still enough time. We could still win this game. Now we're only down 42-28. That's 2 touchdowns. We still have enough time. You march down the field and throw a 100-yard pick six. Just absolutely brutal. And all of a sudden you're down 49-28, and that's game. I mean, they got the ball back in third time, drove right down the field, and then scored, going up to 35 to make it a little closer, a little more self-respectable. But that's got to kill you if you're a USC fan. You get the ball, drive all the way down, throw an interception, pick six. Get the ball back, drive all the way down, throw a pick six. Get the ball back, drive all the way down and score. Like, oh, so close. You could have caused even more chaos. You could have done what I and so many other people want, kept Notre Dame out of the playoff. But those two back-breaking pick sixes is just a brutal way to lose the game. Arizona State 49, Arizona 7. I'm only mentioning this game because Arizona State needed this win because the Big 12 tiebreakers were so jacked up. But absolute domination from start to finish. Just Arizona was a dead team coming in. We knew it. And they continued to be dead. They didn't wake up for this game at all. They didn't put in any fight at all. And we'll get into some other fight that they had later. But no fight. 35-0 by halftime. 650 yards, nearly 650 yards of total offense for Arizona State. It was sad to watch. They didn't even have to play the starters later in that game, and Cam Scadaboo was just pacing the sidelines. You could tell he just wanted to be back out there, just dominating. NC State 35, UNC 30. Man, what a shitty way to send the legendary Mac Brown off. He announces he's coming back. He probably knew he was getting fired, but he wanted to save face maybe for the last game of the season. Maybe he wanted to coach the bowl game. Maybe he was trying to do his best to save the recruiting class. I don't know what his intentions were. But then they come out the next day and announce he's fired. But he still gets to coach in the last game. Like, what a bummer to start off that. And then you lose to your rival at home. Just brutal. UNC was up 20-13 going into the fourth quarter. Lost the lead. Took it back with just under 2 minutes left in the game. And then North Carolina State drove 75 yards in a minute 26 to win the game. I really would have liked to have seen Mac Brown go out with a win. It would have been nice. I also would have liked to have seen Mac Brown just retire and go off into the sunset. It's sad to see a legendary coach end his career this way, but and I think they already announced he's not coaching the bowl game. It's just a shitty way to send him off. Just unfortunate as hell. Evening slate of games. Florida State. Florida wins 31-11. Florida opened up the season, depending on where you got the numbers, with an over-under win total of 5. Some people had 4.5. I found it at 5. And I had the over. They finished 7-5. Good for them. Florida State, they opened the season with an over-under win total of 9.5, and they finished 2-10. Just completely different seasons from how they were predicted to how they finished. Just such different seasons. And Florida just dominated this game from start to finish, which can't be surprising. Florida State's been dead for months. You could argue since the beginning of October they've been dead. They turned the ball over 5 times, allowed 8 sacks, 14 tackles for loss. Just brutal. You could argue that Florida should have won this game by a lot more. Lagway didn't even do anything special or crazy to try and win this game, to do anything crazy, just nothing. It was just a mediocre game from all around for Florida, and they just won easily, 31-11. Just Florida State is a dumpster fire. And I'm not getting into the news. I know they hired an offensive coordinator. I will talk about that later this week when I preview conference championship games. This is solely a recap. Texas 17, A&M 7. Story of A&M's season. When they've had to play a good defense, they lose. Simple as that. When they've had to play mediocre teams or defenses, they win. That's just the way it is. They don't. The offense is not good enough to go up against good defenses. And that's literally, like, go back and look at every team they've played this year. All of their losses has been to good defenses. All of their wins have been against teams or defenses all around. In this game, honestly, the score has hit so much closer than it actually was because the offense actually never scored for A&M. The offense scored no points for them. Texas had 2 straight drives in the second half that ended with a turnover inside A&M's 10-yard line. That's driving down, throwing a pick six inside the 10-yard line, and then getting the ball back after that pick six, marching right over that defense all the way inside their 10, and then fumbling the ball. Unfortunate turn of events for Texas, but it was A&M's only score of the day was that pick six. A&M offensively on the day, 4 of 11 on third down, 0 of 3 on fourth, less than 250 yards of total offense, 2 turnovers. Texas just dominated from start to finish. And like I said, you could argue that they should have won by a lot more. And they honestly should have just shut out Texas A&M. Granted, later on in the game, Texas A&M got down to like the goal line and decided to go for it on 4th and goal instead of kicking in a field goal. Hindsight 2020, they probably should have done that, but whatever. Texas A&M, the future's bright, but they need to figure out some things on offense because they couldn't move the ball. When they had it late, deep in Texas territory, it's not because they marched all the way down the field. It's because they blocked a punt. If they could have done anything on offense, anything at all, they would have won this game or kept it a lot closer than 10 points. Just brutal. I don't think Texas is going to win the national championship, but I can't say that really about any team. Honestly, it hurts me to say this. It's probably going to be Oregon, but I still don't even think that they're going to win the championship. I really don't know what's going to happen, but Texas has some flaws, as we know. Future is bright for Texas A&M. Kansas State 21, Iowa State 29. I mean, Kansas State kind of lost this game more than Iowa State won it. First play of the game, Kansas State fumbles it, and Iowa State only needs to go like 27 yards to score a touchdown. So they were down 7-0 very early. A few drives later, Iowa State's still leading 10-7. Kansas State fumbles it again. Iowa State recovers and only needs to go 30 yards to score, and they go up 17-7. Kansas State also drove it all the way down to roughly Iowa State's 30-yard line, turned it over on downs. They also went to kick a 21-yard field goal later on, got blocked. Avery Johnson had one of the most boneheaded plays late in the game and ended up with a safety. Just continually shot themselves in the foot, and Iowa State taking advantage of Kansas State shooting themselves in the foot. Play this game again, and I bet it's a different story. Iowa State needed this win badly. Kansas State didn't necessarily need it for anything. Their chances of winning the Big 12 championship, getting to the Big 12 championship, were basically done at this point, or were done at this point based on results earlier. But Iowa State needed this one. They also needed TCU and BYU to win to make the Big 12 championship game, but they needed to win this in order to stay alive. So good for them. They won the game. They needed to win it. Kansas State lost that game more than anything. Houston 18, BYU 30. Story of Houston's season. If other teams score more than 20 points, the game is lost for Houston. BYU didn't really play the greatest game, honestly. It's just Houston played a worse game. This game was close late in the fourth, but Houston could just not stop turning the ball over, and BYU ends up holding off the win and sends Iowa State to the Big 12 championship game. So now we have conference championship weekend is all set. Big 10 championship will be Oregon and Penn State because Ohio State lost, Penn State won. Big 12 is going to be Arizona State and Iowa State. Actually really excited for that one. SEC is going to be Georgia, Texas, which predicted that preseason, so that one ended up coming true. Also, Big 10 championship. If Ohio State had just won, that's exactly what I predicted it would be, Oregon and Ohio State, but I just had to lose. I was so close being nailing 2 of the conference championship games. ACC, I got this one half right preseason. SMU and Clemson. I mean, I expected SMU to have a great season. I did not expect 11-1. Good for them. First season in the ACC, you get to play for a championship. Fantastic. I love it. College football playoff. In the end, this one does not matter because we still have conference championship weekend to play, and that will kind of move some things around officially. Teams like Boise State could lose. Clemson could win. So that will shake things up significantly if things like that do happen. But right now, right here, here's how I have it. The 9 versus the 8. I have Ohio State at 9, Tennessee at 8, Tennessee hosting Ohio State, winner moving on to play Oregon. I got the 12 seed being Miami, the 5 seed Penn State. Penn State would be hosting Miami, winner moving on to play Arizona State. I'm still unwilling to put Boise as one of the top 4 conference championship champions. I just can't do it. I think Arizona State is a better team than Boise, so I have them at the 4. I got Boise at 10, though, taking on Notre Dame at 7. So Notre Dame would be hosting Boise State, winner moving on to take on Georgia. I have Georgia at the 2 spot because I do think that they are the better team than Texas. We already saw them play this year. And I think Georgia will win against Texas, so that is why I have Georgia at the 2. And then finally, I have Indiana at the 11, Texas at the 6. So Texas would be hosting Indiana, and the winner moving on to play SMU. I have SMU as winning against Clemson in the ACC championship. If Clemson wins the ACC, then I'm going to put Boise in at the 4, just because I can't, in good faith, put Clemson that high. I don't even know if I would put them in the playoff, honestly. I would struggle with that so hard. But I do have SMU winning, so I do have them as the 3 seed receiving a bye. Betting recap. Your boy is hot. Positive attitude, winning mindset. We turned this thing around. And it's a little disappointing because I went 5-0 this week. And I went 5-0 last week. I finished the season 10-0. 40-36 overall, hitting at a 52.6% rate. And I am still down 0.33 units. $1.64. That is all I am down. The regular season is done, so my 5 faves is officially done. I am no longer giving out 5 favorites. Now, that being said, I am still going to be giving out bowl season picks and conference championship picks and playoff picks. I take it back. Playoffs are going to count towards my 5 faves. Bowl season, conference championship game, absolutely not. It just can't do it. Maybe you could convince me to do the conference championship, but I'm not doing bowl season. It's just too unpredictable. Can't in good faith add that to my record, but I will be giving out picks still throughout bowl season. But yeah, regular season's done. I almost got positive. I just needed one more bet to go my way. Just one more of my losses to go my way, and I would have been positive. But that's the way of betting. But hey, only being down $1.64, down 0.33 units, I'll take it. After a full season of college football, that positive attitude and winning mindset turned it around. Now, the parlay did not hit. Thank you, Kansas State, for not winning, I guess, because that sucked. Finished 2-12 on parlays, down 7 units. Not great, but that's how it is with parlays. When I keep track of parlays, I do the same unit of measurement that I would do for a regular bet. But when I do play these parlays, I do not put a full unit on. I put maybe a quarter of a unit on. Just so you're aware. So when I keep track, it's a full unit, but when I actually place the bet myself, I do a quarter of a unit. My buddy, he won this competition a long time ago. My whole positive attitude, winning mindset, turning it around was more so for me than anything else, and for you, so that you weren't losing. But he went 3-1 on the week. He had Clemson, Tennessee, Arizona State, and Rutgers money lines. Clemson's the only one that fucked him there. He finishes the season 33-15, hitting at a nearly 69% rate. Up 16 units, $81, however you want to go about that. Absolutely killed it. His parlay did not hit yet again, so he is 3-8 on the parlays. Still up 1.8 units, though, so he did have a massive parlay that hit middle of the season. It's just kept him afloat the whole time. And then finally, my favorite segment of the day, or of the show. Dude, are you high? But before we get into that, we got to take a quick smoke break. Dude, are you high? Uh, I struggled. I struggled this weekend trying to pick a winner of Dude Are You High. Everything from coaching decisions by Mike Elko and Brent Key to terrible, terrible refereeing in multiple games across the country, which is every week, but it just felt especially bad this weekend. To just rivalry weekend as a whole. So the winner for Dude Are You High is this whole weekend. This whole college football weekend was high as hell. Like I said, there were so many coaching decisions that were just questionable as hell. Refereeing decisions and non-calls and calls that were questionable as hell. There was one, I don't even remember which game it was at this point. The refs gave the team a first down. I think it was in the Iowa State-Kansas State game. I don't fully remember. Gave the team the first down, but when you watch the play, he was a full yard short, wasn't even close to the first down marker, so they had to go back and review and realize, oh, we moved that ball up a full yard and gave them the first down, or I don't know how they got it so wrong. College referees, notoriously bad for placing the ball. Watch any game, and they are terrible at spotting the ball. They give teams a horrible spot more often than not. Happens every game. Just watch. You'll get infuriated when you notice it. This one was one of the worst I've ever seen. There was calls, and Georgia Tech fans, do not get mad at me, but there were calls in that Georgia Tech game that went both ways that just were unbelievably bad. Non-calls that happened that were just unbelievably bad. But then you had Ohio State, Michigan. Michigan, after the game, after beating a team that they were nearly 20-point underdogs against, comes out, plants their flag at midfield, and Ohio State loses their shit and starts a brawl. And this brawl lasted forever. Police had to get involved, and pepper spray was, shot out, and all this stuff. You had Gus Johnson saying how classless it was for Michigan to do that to Ohio State. We all know Gus Johnson loves Ohio State and that is his team. But he made it very, very clear yesterday that Ohio State is his team and that Michigan is just classless. He even had the line of Michigan pulls off the win and they didn't cheat this time. He's throwing out those little digs, calling Michigan. It's just, we all know which way he felt or which team he roots for. But starts fighting after the game. And then you have a fight after the North Carolina State game. And then you had fights during the Iron Bowl. And then you had Arizona State goes to Arizona, beats them 49-7. Arizona didn't put up any fight at any point in the game. Just gave up from the beginning. Gave up before the game even started. And so then when Arizona State wants to go and take this spear, the trident, and they stab it into the midfield, and then you come out and start fighting and shoving and trying to yank pathetically try to yank the trident away from Arizona State, you put up more fight in that game after the game than you did during the game. Pathetic. And then we go to Florida and Florida State. Florida comes into Florida State and just doesn't even try that hard and wins easily because Florida State is just such a dumpster fire. So then what does Florida do? Because they just dominated their rival in their home stadium, they plant a flag at midfield. And Florida State loses their shit. Mike Norvell gets in Billy Napier's face and is yelling at him, basically saying, deal with this is whatever. Goes over there, yanks the flag away from a player or a staffer and throws it on the ground. Players are throwing punches, shoving, pushing, whatever. Again, Florida State showing more fight after the game than they did during the game. There was just so many fights all weekend long after games. The crazy games, fights after games, rivalry weekend did not disappoint. Play calling, decision making, refs calls, non-calls. This whole weekend was just absolutely high, and I loved every second of it, and I am very sad I am so sad that college football regular season is over. We have a little over a month left now. It's getting to the end, and I am sad to see it end. But I thank you all for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this weekend as much as I did, and I will be talking to you guys on Thursday to preview conference championships.